time we'll be here at the Emporium. We may be in this building at some time in the future, depends who ends up leasing it. But Mr. Clark here has offered his new art gallery, Culture Club Art Gallery, as to host our poetry. And so
Thank you all. I hope you all use it. I'd be honored.
Every third Friday at 6, we'll meet over there. I'm going to move my podium over there. Vic has a place to store it over there.
Surely.
Are you saying you have arranged that?
Vic has offered it, and I have accepted it on behalf of
So the new meeting place is at the Culture
We'll be at the
Club?
Culture Club every third Friday at 6 o'clock.
My pleasure.
And,
We'd be honored. We'll try and be there as many times as we can.
It's a beautiful.
When you're not on the boat.
Kelly's been trying to come for months now.
It's a beautiful.
Did you hear me, Vic?
I'm sorry?
When you're not on the boat.
When you're not on
We're not.
We're never
We're
on
never
the boat.
on the boat.
Only
We're on the
we have
boat when
company.
company comes to town.
it's a company. boat.
We'd actually rather come to the poetry reading.
Just
Obviously.
Yeah. We left our company.
The Culture Club is a wonderful new addition to downtown Winnsboro.
What is the street address?
It's right across the street.
I know where it is, but what is
It's 107 East
Elm?
Elm.
East
107
Yes,
East
sir.
Elm.
And we support it. And we hope it brings a lot of wonderful visitors to our town, especially ones with money in their pockets. Because they'll spend it in more than one place when they come to a town like this. So we're happy about that, excited. And, anyway, through announcements, third Monday is coming up this Monday, Monday Night Live. They're going to have jazz as the music. They're right outside here. They're going to have food again, but they promise to move it down the street so that there's more space. I'm assuming the steakhouse, which I heard is not rebuilding. The building's too far gone for them to rebuild it. So eventually the insurance company will tear it down, but nobody knows when that's going to happen. But I assume they will be selling beer on their patio like they did last month. I don't know that for a fact because they terminated the merchant meetings for a couple of months. So I don't know what's going on. I'm sure Rooster will have food and be serving inside like they did last month, which is great because it's nice and cool in there. And Leafy's doesn't participate anymore in Monday Night Live, so it doesn't matter what they do. They've stopped participating well, they haven't done it at all this year. They stopped sometime last year. I guess it did too well. They'd always sell out. Whatever they brought, they'd sell out. But they don't do it anymore. Let's see what else is going on. Art Center for the Arts. There's an exhibit there right now. In Focus Photography Club, a local photography club which has 20-some members. Is currently having an exhibit over at the Winnsboro Center for the Arts. It's a free exhibit. Joe Dan has a picture in it, among others. And it's a beautiful exhibit. There are wonderful, wonderful photographs in there, some taken from all over the world, and obviously a lot local. They have the DSQ Electric coming up next week. They were here before. DSQ stands for Dallas String Quartet. Electric means they're electrified instruments. They play a combination of classical and everything else, from Beatles to classical music. They're excellent. They're good looking too, so it's got a benefit of having a
Okay,
couple.
now you got my attention.
When are
Wait,
they
is it
playing,
girls?
Conrad?
They'll be here.
Oh, never mind.
They'll be here on the 23rd, which is next Saturday.
Okay, next Saturday.
A week from tomorrow. And there are 5 of them, and they're excellent. I highly recommend you going to see that. July 28th. Maria Moldau will be here with her combo. She does kind of bluesy stuff. She's an old gal now. She's my age, so that makes her in her 70s.
I didn't know you was that old, Conrad.
Well, it's old, No, she's younger than I. She's probably in her 60s. I saw her on Carson. One of Carson's first shows in the 70s she was on. But, she just sang. We didn't get to hear her speak. Anyway, John Sebastian mentioned her at his concert, if you were at the John Sebastian concert. A great concert, by the way. So that's what's coming up at the Center for the Arts. Right now, they're having either the art camp or for the kids, or the drama camp for the kids. These are the little kids, which is happening this month. Next month will be our super 2-week music drama camp, which I actually started. I forget what the first year was, because I brought it to the Art Center in 2006, and hired a musician to do it, and then they didn't get their act together, and they didn't actually do it till about 3 years later. But I had already paid the musician because he had blocked the time, and a working musician can't afford to turn away business on a promise and then not the promise.
Right.
So when they finally did it, he was paid for. I basically underwrote the first one, which was, I guess, 6-7 years ago. And it's been going on every year since then. And it's a wonderful, wonderful thing where kids from, I guess from elementary school up through high school, actually write a musical comedy. Now, the basic theme is prearranged by the musician, my friend George Gagliardi, and the people who are directing. They come up with a theme, and he comes up with a theme song, and the story. But then the kids come up with everything in between. Most of the storyline, they come up with words to the songs. My friend writes the music. That's the first week. In the second week, they rehearse it, they build props, they make costumes, and then they perform it. It's amazing.
Nice.
It really is amazing that kids can do this, even with some adult supervision. And every performance has been really spectacular. It's just incredible. If you can possibly make the show, they perform it the second weekend, Saturday evening and Sunday afternoon. I used to video record them. I don't do that anymore. But they're really great. Anyway, and they always need sponsors, so if you have some extra cash, you want to put some money into that, they always need that. So, those are the announcements. Those of you who haven't heard on our YouTube audience, Emporium will have its last day of business on the 30th of June, which is coming up quickly. 2 weeks from Saturday will be the last day. Everything's on sale in the shop. Got really good prices on everything. In July, I'll be emptying the building, so I'll be here most days, but I'll be running back and forth, or be passed out on the floor. One of the two. Because it's not going to be much cooler in July than it's been in June. But that's the plan. Those of you who are interested in the wooden motorcycle, again, Vic Clark has graciously offered his new building for me to display it in, which we'll be doing, and we'll move it over there sometime in July. And with a price on it and maybe some other stuff that he wants to promote in there, and so we'll get some good use out of the building. And so that's the plan. And I own a home here in town. I'm not leaving. Love Winnsboro, contrary to some people's thoughts. I really love this town. And I plan to live in this town until God calls me home, whenever that is. I hope it's later than sooner. So that's the deal. If anyone has any questions about some of the fixtures in here, bookcases, extra bookcases, I'll have display cabinets, counters, all of that's going to be for sale. And at really, really good prices. Without further ado, we'll get to some poetry, which is why we're here. Unfortunately, my wonderful Ogden Nash book, somebody bought it. Stupidly left it on my podium here, and they saw it and they bought it. I love that book. It was really funny stuff. However, I still have the Earl Duck book on The Pen is My Pulpit. You weren't here last week, so this guy was a preacher. He preached for many years until his health made him stop, but he was writing poetry all his life. He retired and ended up in Mount Vernon right here until he passed away in 2000. And after his death, his wife had this book published with his best poems. I read a few of them last time, so I'm going to read a little out of that. I also have Frank Mackey's book called Spur Jingles, it's called. Not Spur and Jingles, but Spur Jingles, and it's dedicated, it's basically cowboy poetry, but for the modern cowboy, not the cowboy and Indian poetry. These are guys who work ranches and those guys. And then, believe it or not, I've got a book called Raspberries Run Deep, and it's by Edsel Ford. You remember the Edsel?
Yeah.
Well, him. The guy, Henry Ford's kid, who,
Oh, it was Henry's kid. I didn't know that.
who they named the Edsel
I don't
actor.
either.
I didn't know that.
And Edsel was a strange man. We won't go into that. Look him up.
Okay.
Tell you a little about him. But I've not read any of these, so I'm going to read one or two of these things and a couple out of this and that, and then I'll pass the baton to somebody else. And so, as usual, all my readings are cold readings. That means I've not read them before. I'm reading them for the first time. No idea what's in them. They have bad words. I'll try to expletive delete them. Let's see what happens here. Anyway, this is called Raspberries Run Deep. It's poems, and he also did the photographs in it by Edsel Ford. He was a photographer as well as a poet. And let's see. This is called Because He Turned His Back. I have no idea what it's about. But Edsel Ford. I read the shorter poems. A man can turn his back upon a farm and let a city street replace his meadow, and he can lend to other tasks the arm which shook gooseberries from the deepest shadow. And he can punch a clock with that same hand, which swung a sickle through bright clouds of fescue. And when his heart beneath cement and sand hardens, who can then effect his rescue? There is a supermarket in his grove, a filling station where he milked the cows. The little apple orchard which he strove so hard to nurture has been sheared to house a parking lot. And there's a go-kart track in his front yard because he turned his back. Edsel Ford. Well, this is an interesting sounding title. I don't know whether I should read it or not. Burning the Horse.
Burning the horse.
Horse, yes, the horse. Not the house, the horse.
I don't think he was thinking house.
Okay. No, that horse was such a lovely thing. Although his days were dim, he still caused miracles to sing in us who mounted him. His eyes were sunken in his head, his back swagged like a nest, from which the bones protruded like sticks, but oh, the best were those Olympian hooves of his. They clopped like globs of clay when spurred no harder than a kiss to tear the wind away. Across the orchard he would clank with such elan and style, the apples fell from either flank and gathered in the aisle. He was the only carousel we ever knew. He bore his load, however miserable, thoughtless of the score. His always ghostly countenance deepened with summer's dying, and he went into a wondrous trance, not on a straw bed lying. But on his feet, all angular, like marionettes at play, with sticks gone slack, but it wasn't far to fall, and he fell one day. Stunned by a loss so soon, so cruel, yet curiously grim, we watched our elders pour on fuel and strike a match to him. The great horse burned for 7 nights, and on the 8th came rain, and it seemed to me he came to life, twice as big again. The autumn air was full of him. His carcass boiled and bubbled. He went out in any limb. Another flared, redoubled. At night the fire pushed back the dark and caught the tawny glow as coyotes watched the ribbed arc and the simmering sea below. And when the tide tongued at the heart, we watched it swell and spew. It parched and peeled and pulled apart, as ours had seemed to do. But weary at last of his demise, we looked for other pleasure, till turning back I met his eyes, and saw them take my measure. One final tendon snapped and spun, bright embers like a fountain. This Hippocrene on Helicon, and I on such a mountain. Edsel Ford. Talking about
Interesting.
his carousel horse. Okay. I think we did those 10-gallon hats last month, so we won't do that. This is written in Cowboy, so you'll have to forgive me, because I'm an old Jewish kid from New York, so it's hard for me to read stuff like this. I'll do my
Wanna wear my
best.
hat?
I could probably, but I wouldn't be able to see anything if I did. This is called Them Stars. Your kin reach right out and touch 'em, so it seems, as you're set upon your pony, thar at night, keeping company with your buddy and your dreams, just a-singing so them cattle won't take fright. For them stars is winking from that blue-black sky, and they seem to be the jewels on angels' hands. They can't be reached, and wit they seem so nigh, why, I've read the stars as really other lands. They seem to be so friendly as they shine. They pull the thoughts out of your what ain't right. Them stars is everything that's clean and fine. That's why God used them on that Christmas night. I don't know what the next world has for me. This one has dealt me blows that left the scars. If I could choose just where I'd like to be, I'd choose a night alone with lots of stars.
That was a good one.
Frank Mackey. This is Frank Mackey from Spur Jingles. This book is written was published in
1937.
He's an expert, 1937. It's signed by Mr. Mackey himself, this book. This one has many pages, so I'll skip this one. It's called Old Faithful, subtitle Not the Geyser, for those of you who have been to Yellowstone. I've been there. And it is faithful. There's a lot of darned hot water shooting up thar in the park, and them dudes take pictures of it while they're here. Who wants hot water anyhow? It's just a fancy show. It would be fine if that thar stuff was beer. The Injuns seen it first, they say, but what use is the thing? So fur I can see 'twould be no loss if Old Faithful would quit spouting, lay down, and go to sleep. It ain't that way now with our famous hoss. We keep him for the dudes that come to visit the old man. We feed that pony well for fear he'll spoil. Each summer breeds a flock of dudes that come from everywhere, since our old man sunk wells and got some oil. That hoss is just a special pet with all the boys around. He'll eat his lumps of sugar from your hand. He packs the boss's kids to school each day upon his back, but for them dudes he cuts up something grand. When Jim breaks out the buckboard and starts to greasing wheels, we know for us the annual show will start. Somebody ropes Old Faithful and brings that pony home. And all of us know he will play his part. Most of them dudes that come to us decide to turn right wild. They must be cowboys and not amateurs. We rig them out in battered hats and even lend them shirts, as well as boots and quirts and chaps and spurs. All Swanee, how they swagger as they enter the corral. Me and the kids, we just sit at the fence. We know that hoss won't fail us because he never has. Old Faithful has a lot of common sense. He snorts and rolls his eyes round and glares at them thar dudes. He's wild as any outlaw from the band. Them dudes don't know what makes him snort and act up like he does. They ain't seen Slim has pepper in his hand. That hoss is being handled by at least 4 husky men. The show he's putting on just can't be beat. The rider's kind of peaked as he walks with mincing steps. We've jammed the smallest boots upon his feet. He mounts. We turn Old Faithful loose. That hoss jumps in the air. The dude, he hits the ground. Well, ain't that rich? When Cockleburs is placed beneath the blanket on the hoss, 'twill make the best of him rear up and pitch. Woohoo! All right, just a couple from here.
You come here in 2010, you probably couldn't have read that poem, huh? You wouldn't have had the rope for it.
Well,
Yeah.
no. Well, I got here in '05, but that still wasn't enough. That still wasn't enough.
Southern accent.
Hey, you know, Brooklyn Jew, Los Angeles. I can barely speak. This one's highlighted. Then maybe I should read that one because it's highlighted. Under that old oak tree. And that's highlighted. It's highlighted in green. So. I'm thinking back to an old oak tree on Brother Mike Anderson's place, where the best of God's people gathered, each one with a smile on his face. These folks truly loved each other. Hugs and hellos were everywhere. Then the pastor of the flock would lead in an opening prayer. Brother Eddie, their leader, a man of God, would invite all the folks to sing. Then the voices would join in one accord, and the hillside would start to ring. Amazing grace, how great thou art, in the sweet by and by, when we all get to heaven and a tear would well up in your eye. Brother Slanton would open his Bible and preach a message from the heart of God. Put on the breastplate of righteousness, and down the road of life you trod. And also put on them gospel shoes as you start off down the street and get ready to share that gospel with some lost poor soul you may meet. I love these people with all my heart. They're truly some of his best. Give me God's crowd any day, and you can have the rest. They'll be on the front row in heaven when his people start in to sing. I hope you'll let me sit with them when the hallelujahs start to ring. May God always bless Whispering Hope and the people who gather there. They're special people, every one. God bless them each day is my prayer. There's one thing more I'm thankful for, and it means a lot to me. I have a lot of memories about that old oak tree. Okay, let's find another one in here, and then we'll pass the podium. A friend like you, I'll just pick this at random. A real good friend is hard to find, and I have some specifications. To have a friend and to be one. you need to have these qualifications. 1, there must be genuine love for the friend you'd like to know. When he calls and needs you, you need to be ready and go. 2, you need to be a praying friend. That's what I would have you be. Prayer can do things that we can't do. Try it and you will see. 3, you need to be willing to go. 2, you must have a concerned heart. Be willing to give, not take. To those in need, be a friend. And do it for Jesus' sake. 3rd, you must be a Christian, or these other things won't even count. I have a friend who's really ideal. He's worth any amount. I count him very special. In the Lord, he's a brother to me. I wish everyone had a friend like mine. He's as true as he can be. Man can't count, but other than that, it's a good
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Anyway, that's my contribution.
Well, it's good to be back again this month. Most of you know that I do off-the-wall weddings, Wild West weddings, and you never know what's going to happen. When the Reverend says, if there's anybody see why these two should not be joined in holy matrimony, speak now or forever hold your peace.
Heard that.
When that happens, be prepared. But I got a couple that I've got to marry off next Saturday down at 4B Ranch down by Emory area. And they wanted me to include this in the vows, or at least read this. And it's very touching. I had a lady cry the other day over this. It's called These Hands. These are the hands of your best friend, young and strong and full of love, that holds yours on your wedding day. These are the hands that will work alongside yours as you build your future together. These are the hands that will passionately love you and care for you throughout the years. These are the hands that will hold you when fear or grief torments your mind, and with the slightest touch will comfort you like no other. These are the hands that will give you strength when you struggle, and support and encouragement to chase down your dreams. These are the hands that will tenderly hold your children and help keep your family together as one. These are the hands that will, countless times, wipe the tears from your eyes. Tears of sorrow, tears of joy. And lastly, these are the hands that even when wrinkled with age will still be reaching for yours, still giving you the same unspoken tenderness with just a touch of these hands. I thought that was beautiful. So.
That was.
When did you write that down?
That
I
was
didn't write this one. He actually sent this to me and said they wanted that to be included.
Do you know who did write it?
And as y'all know, I like cowboy poetry, cowboy songs, and cowboy, you name it. Okay.
Boy, that's hard to believe.
And since we got a cowboy Jew here sitting back here, I'm glad to hear that. I got to get him a hat before. This is called a melancholy cowboy. I can't hardly say that word. I went to school here. Come all you melancholy folks and listen unto me. I will sing you about the cowboy whose heart's so light and free. He roves all over the prairie, and at night when he lays down, his heart's as gay as the flowers of May, with his bed spread on the ground. They are a little bit rough, I must confess, the most of them at least. But as long as you do not cross their trail, you can live with them in peace. But if you do, they'll sure make the rule the day you come to their land, for they'll follow you up and shoot it out, and they'll do it mean man to man. You can go to the cowboy hungry, go to him wet or dry, and ask him for a few dollars and in change, and he will not deny. He will pull out his pocketbook and hand you out a note. Or they are fellows to strike boys whenever you are broke. You can go to their ranches and others and stay for weeks. And when you go to leave, boy, they'll never charge you a cent. But when they go to town, boys, you bet their money is spent. They walk right up, they take their drinks, and they pay their every one. They never ask your pardon, boys, for a thing that they have done. They go to the ballroom and swing the pretty girls around. That's where we're going here in a little while.
Nice,
Yeah, we're going dancing.
nice.
They rode their bucking horses and watered their broad-brimmed hats. Their California saddles and their pants beloved their boots. You can hear the spurs go jingling, and perhaps somebody shoots. Come all you soft tenderfoot, and if you want to have some fun, come out among the cowboys, and they'll show you how it's done. But take the kind advice of me as I give it to you before, but if you don't, they'll order you off with an old Colts 44.
Very nice.
That was from the cowboy songs and ballads and
Nice.
all. Thank you. You're up,
That's a
Mr.
good
King.
one.
I'm up. I just pulled this book off of one of Conrad's many bookshelves called The Viking Book of Poetry of the English-Speaking World. And I just opened to page 139, and there is a poem by Robert Greene, The Shepherd's Wife's Song. Ah, what is love? It is a pretty thing, a sweet unto a shepherd as a king, and sweeter too, for kings have cares that wait upon a crown, and cares can make the sweetest love to frown. Ah then, if country loves such sweet desire to gain, what lady would not love a shepherd's swain? His flocks are folded, he comes home at night, as merry as a king in his delight. And merrier too, for kings bethink them what the state require, when shepherds careless carol by the fire. Ah then, if country loves such sweet desires to gain, what lady would not love a shepherd swain? He kisseth first, then sits as blithe to eat his cream and curds, as do the king his meat. And blither too, for kings often fears when they do sup, where shepherds dread no poison in their cup. Ah then, if a country loves such sweet desires to gain, what lady would not love a shepherd swain? To bed he goes, as wanton then, I ween, as is a king in dalliance with a queen. More wanton too, for kings have many griefs, affects to move, where shepherds have no greater grief than love. Ah then, if country loves such sweet desires to gain, what lady would not love a shepherd swain? Upon his couch of straw he sleeps a sound, as doth the king upon his bed of down. More sounder too, for cares cause kings full off their sleep to spill, where weary shepherds lie and snort their fill. Ah then, if country loves such sweet desires to gain, what lady would not love a shepherd swain? Thus with his wife he spends the year, as blithe, as doth the king at every tide or sith, and blither too, for kings have wars and broils to take in hand, where shepherds laugh and love upon the land. Ah then, if country loves such sweet desires to gain, what lady would not love a shepherd swain? The end. All right, I'll read one more. Short one, I hope.
That was pretty good, Clark.
Was that good? Okay. Here's a short one. It's by The Tempest, and it's called Where the Bee Sucks. Okay? Where the
Mine's just
bee,
looking-
where the bee sucks, there suck I. In a cow's lips bell I lie. There I couch when owls do cry. On the bat's back I do fly. After summer merrily, merrily, merrily shall I live now, under the blossom that hangs on the bough. The end. The Tempest.
I guess it's up to Joe Dan now, our
Conrad mentioned the In Focus Photo Club exhibition at the Art Center. We, members of the club, were limited to 3 pictures each. My 3 pictures are, one, I am the communications guy at Tenney Chapel, and one of the things that happened in the past couple of years is a remodeling inside and outside of the church, and after that was done, the ladies of the church published a cookbook, a new cookbook. I think it was their 3rd cookbook, and I was detailed to get a picture of Tenney Chapel immediately after the remodeling while the paint was drying, and I did that, and a large version of that, 40 by 30 I think now, is inside our Family Life Center when you enter. A smaller version of that, 13 by 16 maybe, is in this, is one of the 3 of mine. And also, there's a picture of some years back, I forget, 10 or 12 years ago, we had a member there named Lewis Newton who had a huge Great Pyrenees dog, whose name, white, a really beautiful white dog, but huge. And his name was Buddy, and he was known as Buddy the church dog, because he was there every Sunday, and sometimes during the week he would show up. And there's a picture of him being admired by a couple of the kids at Tenney Chapel at that time. I don't know the year exactly, but that's the largest one. It's probably 16 by 20 or something like that. And then my 3rd picture is a black and white of the house that, by the time I made this picture, it was no longer a house. It had become a barn. And the chimney had been taken down, and it didn't even look like it looked like what it was, a barn. So it's the barn I was born in when it was at one time a house. It used to be the rent house owned by the Tenney family who raised me after my parents died when I was quite small. And Ambrose Tenney, and his second wife, my grandmother Elizabeth Tenney, had this rent house, which was about a quarter of a mile north of the old Tenney home place. And I was born in that house. My mother, and it was also known as the weaning house. all of Ambrose's kids, when they first got married, spent their first few months or so in that house before they could get their own house. So it was called the weaning house, but later it was known as the rent house and whatever. So I was born in that house, and one time when I was living in another state somewhere, again I don't remember the year even, but I was visiting my folks, and I was told, they're going to tear down there's an old country song, they're tearing down the house I was raised in or something like that. And so my folks told me that they're going to, the land has since changed hands. I'm not even sure who owned it at that time. But, the house you were born in is being torn down sometime in the next few days. And so I got my camera and went down and made a black and white photograph of it. And, the chimney was gone. Somebody had found a use for the bricks, removed the chimney, and had been using it as a storehouse for hay and things like that, and cows were grazing the hay that was in there. I thought of it at the time as a manger, because I kind of liked the idea of the picture of the manger I was born in. But anyway, that's my third picture. So, but there are a lot of really, like Conrad said, there are pictures from all over the world. One of our members of the club is Bob Williams, who spends time at the Galapagos Islands usually once a year or more, something like that. And he goes to all kinds of National Geographic photo seminars and gets pictures. I remember one time he had a personal exhibition in there, and had this beautiful picture that I really liked. And I said, Bob, where is that? And he said, that's Caesarea Martina. I knew exactly where it was, that's where the Apostle Paul first went before the authorities, and then later he had requested to be tried in Rome, and of course that's the more famous place where he was tried and all that. But the first place he was actually tried was in Caesarea Martina, which I was familiar with from Scripture, but had never seen a picture of it, and if I could have afforded it, I would have bought that picture. But there are pictures like that, some, like Conrad says, some really great pictures. I encourage you to. It'll be there all of June, and I think 5 days into July. So you'll have plenty of time to go see it if you can work it in. I had, I think the two that I've narrowed it down to are a couple of short poems. Cowboy poems as well. Oh, this is a copy of also of Spur Jingles. It still has the dust jacket on. And that's why I knew when it was published, in 1937. It is a really nice book. This one is, I was kind of captivated by one of the titles. One of them is called The Association Dick. And I would remind you of Dick. I suppose Doc may be the only one who knows this, and maybe all of you know it, I don't know. But it was, the word dick in the poem here refers to the abbreviation for the word detective. And, back in the 20s and the 30s, nobody called a detective. They were called dicks. If you've seen any of the old film noir movies, you're familiar with that term. You don't hear it anymore, or I don't, but and I was captivated by the title because some of you who are maybe have raised cattle or grew up raising cattle, maybe your folks raised cattle, or maybe you just read a lot, know that the Texas and Southwestern Cattle Raisers Association, I'm sure all of you have seen the signs on the pastures in this county and neighboring county, all over Texas, and parts of other states are also part of the Texas and Southwestern Cattle Raisers Association. But usually you'll see, if they're a member, there'll be a sign on there somewhere on the fence saying member Texas and Southwest Cattle Raisers Association. And that is up for a purpose. That's up there because everybody knows that the detectives that they hire always get their man. And they are members of that of that organization are actually special Texas Rangers. They have Texas Ranger badges. They're not the same as the members of the Texas Department of Public Safety, but they have the same title, except they're called Special Rangers. And so when I saw this title here, the Association Dick, I think my first thought was Texas and Southwestern Cattle Raisers Association. And I have a hunch, he may have, although he doesn't mention that particular organization, I suspect that he had it in mind. If not, it sounds like it. I have heard them sing of rangers and of pioneers and such, when battle smoke and bullets was right thick. But I have yet to find a gink who says a dad-burned thing about our own Association Dick. He was born in the midst of cattle raids that sapped the grazing lands, and we gave him his own guns and shiny star. And you can bet he used them guns and used them mighty well to bring them thieves to justice from afar. Oftentimes his star was hidden, pinned inside his well-worn boot. And this Dick became a member of the gang so he could get his evidence to use the guns he owned and by his lead draw every dead-burned fang. He faced death every minute as he made his daily rounds. He had to beat all outlaws on the draw. He was hired to guard our cattle, but you never heard him squeal. And he faced this life, and he faced it in the raw. Now the need of him is over, for most men are halter broke. But at one time on the range, he was the rage. He did his work and did it well. No history can be wrote unless he is mentioned somewhere on the page. He was quiet-voiced, he was deadly, he was trusty, he was keen. He was found just where the battle smoke was thick. And today we have cattle, and we have our laws, and all because of our Association Dick.
Woohoo!
That again is from Spur Jingles, Frank Mackey. Thank you. We traditionally close these meetings with a paragraph from How to Read a Poem, subtitled And Fall in Love with Poetry by Edward Hirsch. A book that didn't cost very much, but is full of poetic wisdom. It didn't come from here, but it did come from the remainder bin at the old, no longer there, but the, I can't think of the name of it now. It was a place there in Mount Pleasant that had where you could buy used books, new books, used records, old ones.
Hastings?
Hastings. And there was a bigger one in Longview, but I frequented the one in Mount Pleasant more often. And one time I was in there and they had a remainder sale, and this was less than $1. I don't remember what, but just the title alone, was, I had to buy it, and even though I didn't know who Edward Hirsch was. This has turned out to be one of the best books on poetry I think that have ever been written, and we're on page 41, so you can see that's how far we're into it. So it's good that we found a new home to read. We might eventually get through this book. So thank you, Vic, for making that possible. So here is the Czech poet Jif Orton's poem, A Small Elegy. It is from his book Elegies, inspired or translated by Lynn Coffin. Now, normally, well, put it this way, this paragraph goes, it's going to be a little bit long. Most of them are pretty short. This one is going to be more like 15 lines, maybe. And it's an entire poem by this, in this book, Elegies, from a person by the name of Jerry Orton, O-R-T-E-N's poem. So here it is. My friends have left. Far away my darling is asleep. Outside it's as dark as pitch. I'm saying words to myself, words that are white in the lamplight. And when I'm half asleep, I begin to think about my mother. Autumnal reflection. Really, under the cover of winter, it's as if I know everything, even what my mother is doing now. She's at home in the kitchen. She has a small child's stove. Toward the wooden rocking horse can trot. She has a small child's stove, the sort nobody uses today, but she basks in its heat. Mother, my diminutive mom. She sits quietly, hands folded, and thinks about my father who died years ago. And then she is skinning fruit for me. I am in the ocean, sitting right next to her. You got to see us. God, you bully, who took so much. How dark it is outside. What was I going to say? Oh, yes, now I remember, because all those hours I slept soundly through calm nights, because of all those loved ones who are deep in dreams. Now, when everything's running short, I can't stand being here by myself. The lamplight's too strong. I'm sowing grain on the headland. I will not live long. Well,
That was a deep
until
one.
next time. Thank you so much for being our host for so long.
My pleasure, my pleasure.
We're grateful.
Thanks, our special guest today.
Will you sing? I mean, will you
No.
just a little?
You want to sing?
You want to sing? She will sing. She wants to go to your
wearing a-
karaoke.
She's wearing
Oh,
a,
yes.
she's wearing a revolver there.
Are you
Right?
I am wearing my revolver.
tonight? Are you?
No, we're going out to Gateway. Ron and Kathy's playing at Gateway Restaurant and Bar or whatever it is.
Where is it?
About 5:15, past the hospital, and get to 154, turn back to the left.
Oh, it's in Yannis.
So they got a gig out there, so we thought we'd go to support him because he's keeping music alive for us up here. So
Awesome.
And you're gonna dance.
Oh, Tenny Chapel Music Night is tomorrow night, and Doc will be performing.
Very nice.
Where? Where?
Tenny Chapel, 2 miles south of Brookshires to 4620, a fourth of a mile left.
if you come, I'll let you play the worst of it.